Good morning. I just ran from the Colosseum to St. Peter's Basilica. "8 a.m. And on my way back, I came across the Area Sacra di Largo Argentina, which is a collection of Republican-era Roman temples and curiae. It's also the place where Julius Caesar was murdered by the Senate. On this side, just under the street, lie the remains of the Curia Pompei, which was a massive theater complex erected by one of Caesar's rivals, Pompey the Great. Turns out that this pine tree here is thought to stand at almost precisely the spot where he was murdered, as he descended the steps of the Curia and was beset by all of the senators around him. There's an irony in the fact that there used to be a giant statue of the rival who he had beaten and eventually led to the death of, standing very close to this site. So a lot of the poetry depicts him in his final moments, recognizing that no matter how many wars you win, you can never kill your successor. And welcome to the Capitoline Museums on this day that is continuously raining. These were started in 1471 by a pope who donated some statues and have since become essentially the museum of the Roman Forum. We have our first Bigfoot sighting. I think these are actually all fragments of Constantine here. Man is always serving face. I don't think that hat is gonna do him much good. Got them crazy eyes. So these are the marbles that were taken from the Forum, and they list row by row, year by year, the consuls of Rome, going back all the way to the foundation of the Republic. And if you look up here, you'll see Julius Caesar, Julius Caesar, Julius Caesar, Lepidus Caesar. You can tell that this was right when Caesar and then Lepidus and then eventually Octavian started getting consulates multiple times, right at the end of the Republic. We've got some Etruscan pottery, most likely made by a Greek who was commissioned to make this for the Etruscans. What I find interesting is the beards on here and the helmets over here. It's Greek, but it's not. And here's what's left of the bronze decoration of a Tensa chariot, responsible for transporting, I believe, images of gods back in the day. It's half of a cow, because the other half is in my freezer. Here's a sculpture of a lion just ripping into a horse. You can actually tell, based off the attachment and the fact that the marble here is way more weathered than there, that the head was added during the Renaissance, whereas the rest of it is a classical piece. Here's an enormous bronze of Marcus Aurelius, looking a little too big for the horse that he's sitting on. That is a monstrous statue. Any bets who that is? And here's the famous statue of Romulus and Remus suckling at the she-wolf. This is one of the oldest bronzes in here, from the 5th century BC, or even older. Here's a sarcophagus with a boar hunt, and the couple on top have unfinished heads, which makes me wonder if this wasn't the floor model from the sarcophagus shop. So recently they've done some excavations on the Capitoline Hill, actually, in its garden outside, and they've discovered evidence that the site of Rome was occupied almost to 2000 BC. So, while this place wasn't, the center of the world until 300 BC, it's been here a long time. A tomb from the Capitoline Hill from the 10th century BC, which has been picked up and moved in its entirety. Here are statues from the Tarquin period, toward the end of the Kingdom of Rome, before the foundation of the Republic, at least according to myth. It shows that Rome was already beginning to develop its own artistic traditions
a long time before it showed up on the radar of any of the other powers that documented it. It's thought that these guys were the gables of some kind of early temple. While they were putting the roof on the section over here, the exedra of Marcus Aurelius with all the large bronzes, they dug down into the ground here and they found these giant blocks, which, if I remember correctly, are part of the original Kingdom era foundation of the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus on the Capitoline Hill. This is the oldest, largest temple in Rome for a long time. It was continuously burned down and rebuilt, and by the time of the emperors, it was probably the third or fourth one on the site. But it's amazing that this has kind of always been the most sacred space for Rome, at least until the Christian era and the time of the Vatican. I believe that that column, though, is new. And there he is in all his pallid, staring glory. The Colossus of Constantine, the replica. Big boy. And just past this suddenly appearing obelisk is the Pantheon. There it is. If you see the text, M. Agrippa LF Post Tertium Fecit, this was originally built by Augustus's lieutenant, Agrippa. And over time, it was rebuilt a couple times. The last important one being during the time of Hadrian in the 150s, when the famous dome was added. And then finally, it was converted into a Catholic church, which I think it technically remains to this day. Ladies and gentlemen, always pre-book your tickets. Look at the hole in the center of the dome. This, for 1,300 years until the completion of Il Duomo in Florence, was the largest dome in the world. It was completed under the Emperor Hadrian, and because of the open hole in the middle, it actually rains on the center of the church. I can't get too close without disturbing the people who are actually here for religious reasons, but that thing in the center, thing with the gold in it right there, is a copy of a 6th century icon that used to reside right there. It's been recently removed and placed further elsewhere in the church for conservation regions, but the covering of it is made from pure gold and silver and has been added to throughout the centuries to create apparently quite a stunning work of art. It is a shame I cannot get closer. And here we have the tomb of Raphael, the Renaissance painter. The floor is actually original marble from the Roman period, most of it quarried in Egypt, and it slopes ever so slightly outward so that any water from the center will start to run toward the edges and out of the building. Now I'm looking here and I see what looks like 4 holes in those tiles, so I wonder if water that falls directly from the cupola drains into something under there. Because it's been raining pretty continuously all day and yet I don't see any pooled moisture. The majority of the columns are original too. If I remember correctly, only a pair of them are later replicas. As for the rest of the marble on the walls, it's hard to say because I am in a cave and have no internet, but I wouldn't be shocked if it isn't also fragments of new and old. Here's the Temple of Hadrian. I love walking through Rome and you just randomly come across, you know, ruins. Here it is inside. You can see the old temple wall and the new columns. This apparently served as the stock exchange for Italy for a large number of years up until the late 90s. So, amazing. Always coming back to Wall Street. Here's the carnage of a 10-cheese sampler at Beppe and his cheeses. If you're a cheese guy, I highly recommend it.
Finally back at the hotel. I'm not sure what length this video will end up being, but the day has been a long one. We hiked basically all over Rome. We ended up going most of the distance that I went on my run this morning, just in terms of walking, which for me is normally fine, but my mom got sick pretty early in the morning, and she managed to medicate her way through it. But yeah, it was a lot. Lots of cool stuff, though. We got to see all that stuff in the Capitoline Museum. We got to go actually see the Pantheon, and then to finish the day off, we went to Beppe and his cheeses, Beppe e sui formaggi, and that was great. We got to sample all sorts of different cheeses, mostly organic ones, including one that was 17 years old and ended up tasting like a hard blue cheese, which I think we all had mixed opinions on many of them, but generally it was an amazing experience. So I highly recommend it, especially if you love cheese. We're a Wisconsin family, and so cheese is our thing. I gotta go to bed right now because it's already getting late, and tomorrow morning, super early, we're gonna get up, Uber to Vatican City, where we're gonna try to be first in line for an audience with the Pope. I don't know if I'll film that. It'll depend on the mood. So either way, until next time, good night.